Welcome to Nugget 77 with Steve Groman. In our mail the other day, I noticed you got a whole pile of your science magazines. Did you find something interesting for us to talk about today?
There's always a whole bunch of interesting things. Yeah, I want to talk about something today that actually I've talked about for many, many years. And actually some people kind of think it's silly and it's kind of ridiculous. And why do you say that? But I try to tell people this is all current. And one reason I show a lot of times even magazine articles and textbooks, even from the 90s, is because I want people to understand this is nothing new. From fins to limbs. They say that our hands came from, not just ours, but everything came from fins of fish.
Well, that sounds silly.
Yes, it really is. But it's worse than silly because a lot of our kids end up believing this stuff. But look at this article.
It's from Scientific American, June 2020. And the title of the article is The Unexpected Origin of Fingers. A remarkable fossil reveals that the digits in our hands evolved before vertebrates left the water to colonize land.
Yeah, they say that our hands evolved, the limbs evolved when we were still in the water. So it's rather interesting, but let's just go through this a little bit real quickly.
5 digits radiating from a palm, an arrangement both flexible and strong, capable of playing a piano, wielding a hammer, offering a comforting touch. The hand is our most familiar body part, central to most everyday tasks, from dressing and driving to cooking and texting. Yet from an evolutionary standpoint, it remains largely mysterious, particularly when it comes to the earliest stage of its origin. Other four-limbed creatures, tetrapods as they are known, have hands that look and function quite differently than ours do. In birds and in bats, they help to form delicate wings. In elephants, they support limbs as big around as tree trunks, but the basic structure is the same. In 1859, Charles Darwin remarked on the similarities on the origin of species. What can be more curious than that the hand of a man, formed for grasping, that of a mole for digging, the leg of the horse, the paddle of the porpoise, and the wing of the bat should all be constructed on the same pattern and should include the same bones in the same relative positions.
Here's an interesting thing. I try to stress this in our meetings, but sometimes it's hard to say it without sounding condescending, and I don't mean it that way. I'll use an example sometimes. The leg of a chair, the leg of a table, the leg of a different type of table. Maybe people have tables in their a workbench in their garage. They have a table in their living room. They have a table in their dining room. They have a table on the back patio. They have a chair in each of those locations. Those all have legs on them, and they all serve the same purpose, and they're all basically the same. They're attached to the unit up high, and then they have different shape to them, and then they end up having a foot at the bottom, we'll say. But it doesn't mean they all came from the same thing, some great ancestor of some sort. But the problem is people will always ridicule that idea. Well, that's a man-made item. The problem with that thinking even is that all the other things are God-made items. We say that we can't compare a table and a chair and similar legs because those are made by man, but that implies that the others evolutionarily absolutely accidentally happened on their own. And that's just preposterous. There was a creator, just like there was a creator that made that table. The point is, just because there's a similar structure has nothing to do with the issue that they came from each other or from a same similar ancestor. They go on and talk about that very thing. But notice they say this is a 375 million year old fossil. And it's talking about the digits it has in its pectoral fins that could have helped support the body weight. But again, remember the very first, I guess you call it the subtitle of the article, where it's just very factual. A remarkable fossil reveals that the digits in our hands evolved before we left the water. It's taught so factual, and they only have a belief system. Read just a little bit of this right here at the start of this paragraph.
Darwin proposed an elegant explanation. These diverse animals share this pattern because they evolved from a common ancestor that possessed limbs with digits. In the more than 160 years since Darwin advanced his revolutionary idea, evolutionary biologists have marshaled evidence from paleontology, genetics, and embryology that has proved him right.
Okay, see, this is just a fraud. It's just false what they're saying. First off, yes, there is a common design. Of course there is, because God made everything and it had to function. If we have to walk on land, so does an elephant, so does a dog, so does a cat. A bat flies, a bird flies. Because there is a similarity, that has nothing to do with evolving from each other, but as this what you just read implies, that's the only way they look at things. But then they say they've marshaled all this evidence. From what? From evolutionary biologists? Well, they already believed it was all an accident. From genetics and from embryology, they'll say in the womb, everything has to develop in the womb, but they say in the womb, it proves that things are going through the evolutionary stage. We cover that in great detail in our lesson, Darwin's Legacy. But then they have this chart. You always see something evolves from something else type of thing, or slime to man. But they have this on here, and notice what it says. Look, what's the title of this graph here?
Our great-great-grandfish.
Our great-great-grandfish. I mean, this is like it's a cartoon book for a coloring book for kids.
Your great-grandpa might have liked to fish.
But this is
he
Scientific
probably wasn't a
American
fish, right?
in June 2020. They're still talking this way. Our great-great-grandfish. And it's just preposterous. The article start to close out. It says, in science, however, knowledge is not written in stone. It is subject to change in light of fresh evidence. New discoveries can necessitate revision in... what?
Revision of the textbooks.
Of the textbooks. The problem is, we've covered this for so long, the textbooks that our kids are using are the textbooks that our kids are using. And when they learn something in that factually presented method, they tend to believe it, although it's just simply not true. If the textbooks need revision because of new evidence, then how come what was taught is taught as a fact so often? It obviously was not a fact, or it wouldn't need to change. The Bible says, thy word is truth. It's forever settled in heaven. And the fact is, it doesn't need to change. It still stands the same. All flesh is different, and everything reproduces after his kind. There is absolutely nothing that evolves into something else from something else.
The Bible says that we should be Bereans when we're studying the Bible, and I think we should apply some of those techniques of critical thinking when we study textbooks, whether we're in high school or in college, or just an adult that's not in schooling longer, but watching one of the shows on the Discovery Channel, if the Discovery Channel's even on, but on one of these educational programs that you might be listening to.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point, because they present that stuff in a fun way, an exciting way, a very educationally knowledgeable. People like that kind of stuff, and they end up believing what they have. The article closes out about in 2014, they went to this lab, and this team works on different methods to process the imaging data from the fish. It took some trial and error with different types of data and software, but eventually we hit on a winning combination that would allow us to digitally isolate and study the bones. I mean, it's all in computer models what they're doing. A computer model can say whatever you want it to say. Go back to that workbench in the garage, and the dining room table in the dining room, and the kitchen table in the kitchen, and the chair that's at the computer desk. All those things, in a computer model, you can make those things walk. I mean, you can do all kinds of things with 3D software. That has nothing to do with reality. But then they'll go find some fossil of some sort, and they want it to be the missing link, the transitional fossil. So they'll just claim it is, and then they'll claim they just found the evidence. And it's just preposterous.
Well, with Photoshop, you can do just about anything, can't you?
Just about anything.
Well, thank you, Steve.